A new retrospective, and that only took me what, 2.5 years? Altogether, a pretty quick production, eh? Today we're playing Duck Goin Quackers, or if you're from Europe, Duck Quack Attack for the PlayStation 1. This is one of those games from the era where every game would be released on way too many different platforms, all with unique changes to make it a better fit for that specific platform. And also, for some reason, the era where Europe just hated all of the names given to these games by America, because changing it from Goin Quackers, a rather inoffensive title, to Quack Attack. Why? What are you trying to censor here? Is it because you think we don't understand wordplay here in Europe? It's not even that good of a wordplay. Anyway, I chose to play the PlayStation 1 version of this game instead of the PlayStation 2 version for a couple of reasons. First, somehow this is generally regarded to be the better version on inferior hardware. Man, they must have really screwed up the PlayStation 2 version then. Secondly, this is simply the version I remember playing as a kid, and since this whole show is more or less just an excuse for a nostalgia trip for me, well, PlayStation 1 version it is. That all being said, I have no idea where my original disc for this game is, and for the purpose of capturing high quality footage, I'll be playing this game on an emulator. That might have caused some issues that weren't the game's fault, but I can't be 100% sure about that, so I'll point out those moments when we get to that. The game starts with a cutscene to set up the story, which we so care about, and in my case, the game just skipped this. I'm assuming it's an emulator-related issue, so I honestly don't remember what the story is here. I think some evil dude is making some evil machine and Daisy gets kidnapped because she's a female and we need somebody to save. It's not that complicated, really. And with that, we get right into the main hub area of the game, from which you'll see 4 warp rooms with levels inside. This seems familiar. Every ward has 4 levels in total, 2 levels that play in a 3D hallway. I swear, I've seen this somewhere before. And 2 levels that play more like traditional side-scrolling levels. I actually really like the mix of both of these. And since you can play these levels in any order you want, you can do a 3D level and then a 2D level and then go back to a 3D level and then finish off with a 2D level. Or you could just, play the levels from left to right like a normal person. Every level has a couple of collectibles. First off, there's these electric orbs, which are mandatory, since they are the thing that powers the portal leading to every world's boss fight. Sometimes these are actually more hidden than you might think. And since the rest of the game is so ridiculously easy, you don't always expect to have to go out of your way to look for these, making them easy to miss in certain levels. When you pick them up, the game makes you blink for a moment, as if you've just been hit and you're in invincibility frames right now. I know the game has a different animation for invincibility frames, but you can't just ignore the standard in the gaming industry for something like that, even if you came up with a fancy new idea. Having your own system for invincibility is fine, but don't just think you can use this blinking look for something else. But in the cases where they weren't all that obvious to find, you're generally led to them by collecting the second collectible, the toys. Every level has 3 toys. To collect these, you need to defeat a bug. Yeah, I don't know why either, just stick with me here. Which will start a timer. If you reach a toy before the timer runs out, you can collect it. But if you take too long, the toy will become transparent and you won't be able to collect it. Picking up the toys plays this really annoying animation though, which stops the whole flow of the game for just like Donald to twerk? Really? I didn't need that in my life. A little thing that I appreciate in the level design is that occasionally you'll see a transparent toy without having seen the book anime yet, making you think you might have ran past it, but then a little bit later in the level you see it, meaning that you now have to backtrack a bit to get the toy. This helps you since you should more or less know the layout of the level you've just gone through, and it switches up the gameplay a bit, preventing things from just getting stale by having you breeze through it, because as I said, the game is laughably easy. If you get all of the toys in a given world, Huey, Dewey and Louie, who were previously blocking the 5th level of the world, which is totally optional, will move aside to let you enter the chase level. They're alright. I'm not a huge fan of how you can't see ahead of where you're walking though, but that is not a new complaint with these kinds of levels. What I'm more worried about is that your nephews are literally holding these levels hostage until you collect their damn toys. Like, that's not cool, guys. Also, if there's 4 worlds, who the hell is this 4th little duck? I think we might have an imposter on our hands here. It's kinda sus. Last, you have the time trials. Nothing too fancy here. You can just try to beat the levels in as low a time as possible. I'm getting the weirdest sense of deja vu. I just can't seem to place it. So, that's your basic Crash Bandicoot game, but how does Donald control? The answer is surprisingly not horrible. He runs at a decent speed, making it very satisfying to run through these levels once you master them a bit. Actually making the time trials some amount of fun. This also makes sure that the levels don't drag on too much, since you'll run through them at a decently high speed. On top of that, you have a double jump, just to give you a little bit more airtime and more mobility in the air. And while I still do think 3D platformers with a boring standard double jump usually do it just to compensate for the lack of good movements, and that certainly is partly true here, I actually find myself enjoying it in this game. I have no reason to defend myself. Maybe I'm just getting used to every 3D platforming game having a double jump. At least do something interesting with it though, like Mario Odyssey did it very well, or Ahead in Time. Those games, they did it well. I have to admit though, this standard double jump is easier to pick up and use in gameplay for a younger audience, which this game is aimed at. When Donald gets hit once, he will go into a short rage mode in which you will be invincible, and contact with any enemy works as an automatic attack, getting rid of that enemy. This is actually a really fun and creative use of invincibility frames, something that you don't see all that often. But not only that, it also helps the game be a bit easier. When you get hit, you're more or less sure that the thing that damaged you in the first place is going to be killed, and if you're smart, you can take a bit of a risk and maybe you can take out even 1 or 2 more enemies before rage mode ends. Be careful though, because once Donald stops raging, he'll be grumpy, and if he gets hit again while he is grumpy, he will lose a life. Not that it's difficult to get lives, the game throws them at you, and every time you collect 100 of these stars, you also gain another life. Anyway, you're surely wondering how you can make Donald happy again after getting hit. Well, of course, the answer is sugar. If he drinks a milkshake while grumpy, he will be healed and become happy again. Though, I'm not sure if I should. Donald always seems so eager to heal himself and not me. Maybe I should just let him figure this out on his own. But the fun doesn't end there. If you pick up a milkshake without having any damage, you'll enter a sugar rush where where Donald becomes invincible for a little while. It's really not that complicated. But it is a nice incentive for not getting hit too much, especially since milkshakes aren't that common in the first place. So when you run into one, you'd prefer to get a sugar rush over just getting back some HP. Donald can also attack, but quite honestly, just jump on the enemies. It'll work for almost all enemies in the game, and it's way more reliable. If you die a couple of times at the same checkpoint though, Donald will show you how annoyed he is by playing this angry animation every time he respawns. This might be funny or cute in theory, but in practice, it's just another thing that stops the game from flowing and interrupts you while playing it. It's almost as if they didn't think this game was long enough without these pauses. Yeah, they were right. The game only makes about 2 hours in length or so, only having 16 normal levels, and with the 4 added optional levels, that makes 20. It doesn't help that the levels don't change that much between worlds. The difficulty goes up a slight bit between World 2 and 3, and in World 4 you actually have some new mechanics, like this platform that rotates, only when you're standing on it. That's kind of neat. But other than that, the world themes, as varied as they are more like skins than they are actually separate worlds. You also have all 4 bosses, but those are very basic as well. Just a matter of avoid a pattern, then hit them in the face, repeat until all 3 HP are gone, and you win. It's not really that impressive of a boss fight. For some reason though, during the boss fight, I didn't get any music. Not that it matters that much, because the music selection in this game is very limited, and the music that's there is, I mean, it's alright. And this one time there was just this one sound effect repeating over and over and over again. The dialogue before and after the fights tends to get cut off, and generally the bosses were just a mess. This might be an emulator-related issue. I don't remember having any of these issues with the actual hardware, but it did show up in my playthrough, so I figured I'd give it a quick mention though. Something that certainly I can't see being emulator-related though is the damn hitboxes in this game. It didn't happen that much, but I felt like there was more than one situation where I died while not touching an enemy or obstacle at all. At first I assumed it was an issue with depth perception, but then it also happened with these swinging spike balls in a side-scrolling level, where there is no depth to misjudge. And then there's this damn star. I'm jumping right into it and Donald will not collect it. Really, it's a minor issue, and I know that this is a PlayStation 1 game, so the hitboxes are more or less expected to be genuine. And if this is one of my biggest issues with the game, I guess Crash Bandicoot Goin Quackers isn't that bad of a game after all. And I would say it's worth playing it if you're a Disney fan and you're bored and looking for something to play. Also, yes, this is a Crash Bandicoot clone, if you hadn't picked up on that yet. Might be one of the best ones out there. Thanks for watching my video on Donald Duck Goin Quackers. It's been a while since I've done one of these, so let's keep it short. You can subscribe to my channel and like this video if you have enjoyed this video. And also do let me know what game to cover next in the comments below the video.